I took my daughter last summer through the streets of Drogheda, and I could not walk up the street with her without being leered at and looked at by people. I cannot. RD is now next for 200 now coming into Ireland from the refugee centre. How are you supposed to tell me that my children can come from the secondary school? Tell me how my children are going to be safe to walk from secondary school to my house. Can you tell me that you can guarantee that all these people are coming in? How can you tell me they can be safe? Yes, in Ireland, yes, there's Irish men in the prison and all. I know that. But these people are coming in unvetted. Can you look me in the eye and tell me when I see my daughter, she'll be with me in my house at 3:10, and I'm looking at her and thinking, is she coming in? Where is she? There's wars down the country right now, and that's their number one worry. And you tell me how that's equal and in Ireland for all.
Michelle. I just want to start by just paying tribute to Michelle's excellent
calm
sharing.
I've spent over 30 years.
You should leave. You should leave. You should leave.
I'll say this. I love your passion. Put it into keeping our people safe. And I'm very happy you guys have to say COVID vaccines, refugees, whirling them up. I'm here to listen and to respond respectfully in accordance with. Will you stop praising yourselves? No,
why don't you hear what she has to say? The ability shows basic respect. Somebody else's point of view in a democracy. You respect everybody else's point of view. You're here in a public meeting. You're here in a public meeting which you are entitled. You're here in a public. You're here in a public meeting that you're entitled to speak at. This is democracy. We're a democratic party. We might disagree with your viewpoint, but we are listening. Where else would you have that opportunity? Where else would you have that opportunity? You say you're concerned with the public service. I haven't seen a single one of you at a housing protest. I haven't seen a single one of you at a protest at a Lady Edwards hospital. I haven't seen a single one of you.
We have an Garda Síochána at the back of the room here, just keeping an eye on everything. So we just want to make sure it is nice and calm for everybody, okay? Yeah.
My grandfather fought against fascism, and we will never tolerate it.
Okay, we need to get a little bit of control back in the meeting. No, that lady spoke already, but thank you. We will try. We can't answer if people. Sorry, Jed. Sorry, Jed. 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 Thank you. Right. This lady at the back of the room wants to get her answer. Ivana tried to give her answer, but the two ladies at the front who have the same sentiment, but you won't even let your friend get an answer. So, you know, have a little bit of respect even for people of, you know, please. So would you like to listen to Ivana give an answer?
Yes.
Okay, and just to remember that we are here to be kind and courteous. We are trying to listen to you. Ivana was going to reply to you, but you were just talking over her. And we do want to have a bit of respect in the room. You know, that's well, we're not keeping you here. We're trying to evict you. Nobody's trying to evict you. Would you like to back up and will you let her speak just to try and address some of the questions that the people respectively questioned? Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And thank you again for sharing so calmly. And can I just say, we've had a whole series of town hall meetings, we've had a whole range of different issues raised that matter to people. And I appreciate the frustration of many people who've contributed. I appreciate the experiences that people have shared. It's very important important that we hear that as elected representatives. We are elected by the people. Michelle elected in her local area, Elaine and Pio in theirs, Jed elected in Louth. So we're here to represent and listen to people. So in response to your question, because you asked the first question, the first actual question about vaccination, and I'm very sorry to hear about your health issues, and thank you again for sharing the experience. I'm a mother too, and I have very strong belief in the power of vaccination to save lives, the power of vaccination, and the power of I'm responding to your question. We in Labour have always followed the public health advice. We followed the advice of the Chief Medical Officer. We've promoted the vaccination campaign through COVID because all the evidence we've seen. You asked a question. I'm answering the question. I'm answering your question. And what I'm saying to you is, if you have a strong view backed up by evidence about a particular issue and you believe that view is not being represented by our party or by any other party, then I think you do need to stand for election, to push to put forward that view. We live in a democracy. That's your prerogative. My response. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry to hear about your illness. No, I am answering. I've just answered it. I've told you that we in Labour support. We will help to support anyone who is suffering. But I'll tell you one thing. We've looked for long COVID clinics because so many people have suffered long COVID. Well, we're looking for treatment for those who are hurt. Okay. All right. We'll agree to disagree on that. On the refugee point, I want to stress my enormous support and commendation of Michelle, of Jed, of all of our reps here in Louth on the Louth for All campaign. My experience travelling around Ireland is to see the enormous solidarity and welcome that communities across Ireland, urban and rural, my own constituency, this constituency, across the country, the solidarity and welcome that has been shown to the people who have come here seeking refuge from a brutal invasion of their country, in the case of Ukraine.
Since the outset of the terrible war in Ukraine and the brutal invasion by Russia nearly a year ago, we in Labour, alongside groups like the Ukraine Civil Society Forum, have been calling consistently for a more coordinated approach by government to the housing of refugees and those seeking international protection here. And in particular, we have called for a single and clear coordinated point of contact and centralised systems for managing the state response to this crisis. Back in December, it appeared as though our calls had been heard, and we anticipated then that real change would come. But not so, it seems. Because despite the appointment of Junior Minister Joe O'Brien, who is doing his best alongside Minister O'Gorman and his department, we are still seeing the locating of housing and provision of resources for those fleeing war and hardship being done ad hoc by the government. Despite that change in December, there's still this ad hoc approach with insufficient communication for opposition parties or for local public representatives or communities offering solidarity. And I agree with Minister O'Gorman when he says that no level of consultation might change the views of some on housing refugees in their areas. But what is needed is a centralised approach from government to getting information out to local communities in a timely way when new accommodation is being opened to enable the provision of support to new residents in their area. And such a system would really facilitate and support the amazing welcome that has been shown in so many communities across the country, both in urban and rural areas, for those who seek refuge here. So Taoiseach, it's undeniable that there are sinister actors trying to further a far-right agenda in all of this, in small numbers of people, who are seeking to exploit an information vacuum in order to sow fear and distrust in local communities. And we've seen some awful reports of intimidation of families, of children by protesters. We've seen, in our own case, disruption this week of a Labour public meeting, our own public representatives threatened for expressing solidarity with refugees. So this is a very scary time, and those who engage in racist attacks must be condemned outright by all of us. But government has responsibility here too, and so far we're not seeing sufficient cross-departmental support for the efforts of Minister O'Gorman's department. In particular, we need to see more from the Department of Housing, and indeed more, Taoiseach, from your own department, the Department of Defence, in terms of repurposing of barracks across the country. We're not seeing even sufficient resourcing from IPAS to ensure that they have capacity to provide accommodation. So what will change? And at the very least, will we see the allocation of additional resources to IPAS, perhaps the appointment of a special minister in the Department of Housing, and a coherent NEFIT-style cross-departmental response, coordinated by the Taoiseach with a CMO figure to take responsibility and act as a point person on this. And finally, Taoiseach, will we see the public information campaign and allocation of resources to communities to ensure that supports can be rolled out for those who come here seeking refuge, and supports to the local communities which wish to offer the Cape Míle Fáilte to them?
First of all, I would say that there is a cross-departmental approach, and there's a cabinet subcommittee that's chaired by the Taoiseach, with a range of government departments and ministers attending. In more recent times, prior to Christmas, former Limerick City Manager Con Murray was appointed to coordinate work on the accommodation side. And I think it has to be acknowledged that this is by any distance the largest humanitarian operation ever undertaken by the Irish state. We've never had such a level of refugees fleeing war coming into the country. And people continue to arrive from Ukraine. It's quite shocking, and I appreciate your solidarity with the people of Ukraine. The Russian attack has been vicious. It has been targeted against civilians, and it has been deliberately designed to create a migration crisis, along with energy crisis and so on. And I think Ireland has responded well to the Ukrainian refugee crisis, with about 72,000 people now benefiting from the temporary protection in Ireland. About 15,000 international protection applicants have arrived in Ireland. So that overall we're looking, in terms of accommodation, we've accommodated with 73,000 in total between Ukrainians and international protection. And the greatest pressure is on international protection applicants' accommodation. My own department, by the way, have made Kilbride available for international protection now, having been available for Ukrainian refugees as a transit location. And not clear what you mean by the repurposing of barracks. There's been a significant policy over the last number of decades of closure of barracks, so there's investment going into barracks for the purposes of the military and the defence forces, and it's important that we acknowledge the role and the importance of not undermining our defence forces in this process, but they are available to help and to assist in any form of barracks, for example, in standing up accommodation. That facility is being made available to the Department of Children, and I've made that very clear. And also, in terms of the communication issue, yes, we acknowledge there can be better communication in respect of some aspects of this. Also, I think the 50 million community fund that we have allocated is very, very important, and I would like to see that done strategically in response to genuine needs within communities who have been very welcoming and who have large numbers of refugees and international asylum applicants in their communities. And that will be under the Minister for Community and Rural Affairs that fund will be allocated. I think it's an important fund in terms of engaging with communities who have been very, very responsive, and I pay tribute to a lot of the schools, a lot of our people in education who have been, I think, and teachers who have gone to exceptional levels to work with young Ukrainian children and young people in terms of their education needs, and I've witnessed that at first hand myself.
Taoiseach, can I say I'm disappointed, frankly, by the response, because you've listed figures, you've mentioned the Cabinet Subcommittee, but as you've said yourself, this is an unprecedented challenge, the scale of this, and we're not seeing from government the sort of scaled-up response that it requires. We in opposition who are seeking to show solidarity are often finding out after the far right about plans in communities, and we want to work with communities to show support. I engaged in my own constituency with protesters who are seeking information. I didn't have information to provide to them. We need to see that more coordinated response from government, that centralised point of contact, and we need to see clear evidence of the cross-departmental approach that will give the Department of Children and Integration the support it clearly needs. Because the responses I'm getting on PQs and others are confirming the lack of support from other government departments for the Department of Children and Integration. And we're seeing clear evidence of a lack of capacity in IPAS to address this unprecedented challenge. So we do need to ensure that there are supports in place for communities, and communities are stepping up and showing incredible support and incredible welcome. But we need to see government working with opposition, and indeed I welcome the cross-party committee that's now been planned, but we need to see a stronger COVID-style response from government at a centralised level to this.
This has been unprecedented, actually. And it's the sheer numbers have created the challenges. And yes, we will work on some of the suggestions you have made. There is cross-departmental engagement. The Department of Justice are heavily involved in this in terms of international protection. The Department of Housing is also. The OPW in respect of the first phase of modular housing that's now has made very significant progress, and the first houses will be coming on stream within weeks in respect of the rapid build. And we want to develop that and accelerate the pace of building of rapid build for both refugees and also for purposes of social housing also, and then the reconfiguration of buildings. So all of that work is underway. I don't think it's fair to say that other departments are not supporting the Department of Children. I believe they are. I will be fairly clear on that. Obviously, the Department of Children and Equality is the central department involved in terms of the migration issue and international protection. And that was ordained by for government. But other departments has to be cross-departmental or response to this. And to be fair, when you think of, for example, the work of social protection in terms of, there's been tremendous work done in terms of facilitating people. Sorry, but the protests are not protests.
Thank you.
They are.
Tommy Chagal, Washington, Tommy Irish, the chief, it's up to Richard Boyberg.